Welcome to Rucks, Mauls Oval Balls. We are back for episode 7 of the fans' favourite podcast. Once again, coming here to talk all things rugby at an insane level of detail that nobody knew they wanted, but once they've heard it, they know they want more of it. And yes, so I'm Dave. I am one of the hosts. I'm here with you today on this lovely, lovely week before the Six Nations comes back, and I'm joined by
Rory. Hi David, how are you?
Oh, well, as was well documented in last week, I have my tales of woe with my health, but, you know, all things aside, I'm actually feeling relatively well. How about yourself? How are you doing?
Well, thrilled to hear that your bum hasn't fallen off yet. Yeah, that's what I said. No, I'm good. I'm back in my training phase. Trying to get all the way back to the average level of physicality I had 10 years ago. I've labelled this block Project Leg Cannon, so I can get cannon-like legs to scrummage to the sheds and back.
Fantastic.
No, I'm very well. I'm very well. Looking forward to a weekend of international rugby.
Well, aren't we all? On the topic of legs, slipping into the section that I would normally call mundane banter, you may or may not be aware, Roy, and the listener definitely won't be aware, but I've signed up for a program called Man v Fat Rugby, which is effectively like Weight Watchers, but for blokes who want to play rugby rather than talk about points and sins and things like that. You turn up once a week, you get weighed, and then you play touch rugby for an hour.
How are you finding it?
So, very good program. I'm hoping maybe we could talk about it more in the future once I've really established myself in the program. But you were talking about legs. Picture it, last night I was asked to do the kickoff. It was a very cold night, and upon taking the kickoff and kicking the ball into the air, I managed to pull both quads. So both my right and left quad now have a strain in it after exactly 1 second of playing rugby, touch rugby, and I proceeded to limp the entire game, and I was unable to walk for around 6 hours afterwards. So that is a measure of my current fitness level for you, just to imagine.
No, sorry, just to go back on that. So you were taking the kickoff.
I was the kickoff taker, yes.
Yeah, and you pulled both quads. I don't have a sports science degree, but physiologically, that doesn't seem right.
I was also slightly confused.
Don't use both sets of quads.
No, I'm putting it down to the cold weather. Perhaps not
the leg you use. It's a hamstring-like motion.
You and I both know that fly half isn't my natural position.
So what? You were kicking the ball backwards and upside down. I don't know how you managed that.
It was a great kick. That's all I'll say.
Any kick that leads to you legless can be classed as a great
kick. And I had quite an element of embarrassment around it, and I felt quite sorry for my teammates because I proceeded to be incredibly unhelpful for the remainder of the games. But I persevered and walked through.
Well, not to lift the lid on your future plans, David, but aren't you planning a 10-kilometre run at some point in the future for charity?
I am. For charity, I am planning to do a 10-kilometre run in May this year, which is scarily close. It's probably safe to say I'm a little bit behind on the training plan, but I'm not going to let it get in the way. If I have to crawl the 10K, I will do it, because, you know, it's for charity. It's for a worthy cause, the 4Ed Charitable Foundation. But yeah, this is another setback to what has been a rather slow start to a training regime. But I will say, within my first, it's a major setback, but in my first week of doing this program, I lost 3 kilograms. So
that's pretty good.
I was happy with that. Good. So I'll continue in that vein. I'll keep you all posted on my my efforts in this program. But I thought I'd share my tale of woe.
I love it as I love that as a concept. Playing touch rugby to get yourself fit. It's sort of the staple of every sort of second and third teamer in the summer.
Absolutely.
When the first team are doing their fitness blocks and their heavy training, we go, should we just go play touch for an hour or so, and that'll be enough. That'll be more than enough preparation for a season.
Yeah, absolutely. And the most beautiful thing is it's a lot of people who used to play prop when they were younger. And everyone knows a prop's least favourite part of the game is when everyone says, should we just play a game of touch? Because it doesn't suit any prop's skill set very well. But hopefully next week I'll be able to move a little more freely, and I could be able to establish my dominance on the pitch once more, because I will lead Team Blue to glory once I'm able to move freely again.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's my mundane banter. Do you have any mundane banter for me, Rory?
Well, I think you veered well off script with mundane. That was excellent.
Oh, well, I appreciate the compliment. Well, in that case, let's just summarise quickly what we've got ahead of ourselves in this podcast, so buckle up. What we're going to be going through today is, because we've had a fallow week in the Six Nations, we're going to take the opportunity to dig into some of the more higher, far-reaching issues that are currently in the English game. We're also going to dig into how we have fulfilled and kept our rugby needs fulfilled over this weekend without Six Nations rugby. And we've gone different directions how we've done that, so we'll be able to talk through that.
Yeah.
We'll try and do a preview of the Six Nations next round 3. We're going to play Name Pending. Name Pending is back. We might do something on the England A game, of which me and Rory are going to be attending this weekend. And of course, we'll always find time for the Democratic People's Republic of the Front Row.
Excellent. It's interesting with these fallow week. I mean, I'm not, on the whole, I'm not a fan of a fallow week in the Six Nations. I don't necessarily think I certainly don't need 2 of them.
No.
But what's really interesting is what rugby journalists and rugby people do to fill that time. I mean, in the space of one fallow week, Marcus Smith is now being touted to play 9, 10 and 15 for England, because journalists really were struggling to have something to say.
They were, yes, and there's been a lot of quite outlandish stories that have been going on this week. But beneath all that, there's actually been some really good rugby played. So let's start off. Let's start off, Rory. How have you given yourself your rugby fix this week?
Yeah, I basically took whatever hit I could find in many ways. But actually, it was a really nice opportunity to experience a couple of different types of games than I normally would. So I watched a bit of the Premiership Women's Rugby, the
Brilliant.
Quins Bristol game on the Friday, which was excellent.
Yeah.
Love to talk about that in a bit more detail, because that was a really good occasion with 2 of the game's biggest stars. One outright, Ilona Meyer, for those that don't know, is quite some distance the most high-profile social media player from the US Women's Sevens team out of the Olympics in particular. And Ellie Kildunn for Quins, who's got a good shout for being the best women's rugby player at the moment. I think she'd be certainly in that conversation.
Oh, yeah, she was World Women's Rugby Player of the Year 2024, so in that equation.
Yeah, certainly in that camp. So I watched that game on Friday. That was really good fun to watch. I watched a bit of the Premiership Rugby Cup on Saturday. Watched the Quins Saracens game, which was interesting. Saracens with a very youthful side, Quins with a very experienced side, so interesting one to watch. And then on Sunday, I followed along from home whilst you gallivanted around Kingsholm watching the under-18s put on some excellent games. I followed along on the live link at home and watched all those games across the day, which was really good. So getting the fixes where you can, but some interesting stuff to talk about.
So I'm keen for us to touch on the PWR. I think we should be giving them a bit more airtime than we have done so far in the previous 6 episodes.
Yes.
I'll hold my hands up for not including them so much in the last 6 weeks. But the show they put on that Friday night, I could only applaud them for the event they put on, the way it was staged. The one thing with women's rugby, the PWR, which I think they're getting really, really right, is the players seem to be in tune with the fans and the type of fans who are going to their matches. I think there's a connection there that is forming very, very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was the annual Pride game.
Yeah.
It's become a bit of an annual event for Quins, who, fair play to Harlequins. And, I hate to give them any credit, but they really do go above and beyond to put on a show when it comes to rugby, and they're really making the difference, I think, in terms of how to elevate English club rugby with the the big game, the summer kickoff, both of which have the men's and women's teams playing now. The Stoop is sold. I think they got consecutive sellouts in the league for something like 2 years or something in the men's game. And then at this game, this was really well attended. I don't know the exact figures, but my gut feel would be something like 7,000 or 8,000 were there, which is really good attendance.
I think they said it was over 8,000 tickets sold. Which
which is really impressive, and I think you can see why people are talking up the women's game as being the real growth market, and some really interesting conversations coming out of that, where I think it's Quins are in talks to have specific investors for the women's team.
Interesting.
So rather than club investors, there are brands now looking at the women's game as we want to invest in that bit specifically, because that's where we see the growth. Obviously got the Women's World Cup in England this year, which is already becoming very difficult to get tickets to, which is excellent. I think that's going to be a cracking event. So the women's game is really exciting, and it's really interesting to watch, because whilst I do watch quite a lot of the international game, I haven't watched a huge amount of the club game really up to this point, which is an indictment on me. I really enjoyed watching this one. It put me in mind because of there are obviously differences with any form of women's sport with the men's sport in terms of the type of athlete you get on the pitch. You don't get 6'8", 6'9" players in the women's game typically. You don't get 130 kilo front rowers. It's a very different type of athlete, and it leads to a different game. So a huge amount of ball in play time. Bristol, who were attending, they average 6 kicks in play per game. So a massive amount of heads up rugby, just playing what's in front of you. I want to make this sound as uncondescending as I can, because I don't mean this in a condescending way. It put me in mind of watching either a really, really good kind of grassroots game where there's a really good ethos in the way that the teams play, or like watching, I don't know, like when you see some footage of some of the old amateur days where it was just very much heads up, run the ball, we're going to attack it.
Yeah.
Really, really entertaining to watch, because both teams basically played from everywhere, tried to run everything, and it makes for a lot of improvisation in the game, which is really exciting when you have players like Ellie Kildunn or Alana Meyer on the pitch who can take advantage of that. Ellie Kildunn's got a couple of tries. Bristol ended up winning this one 19-10. Some really impressive performances on their side. They're halfbacks, Bevan and Aitchison. I think Aitchison is the
England 10
starting 10 for England at this point.
Yeah.
She was excellent in the way that she controlled the game. Actually did kick a bit more certainly in the first 20-30 minutes of the game. Really pinned Quins back. Had to make them sort of think twice about how they were defending it. It was a really clever bit of tactical work, actually. But then their running game really came into it. And Lona Meyer maybe not as prominent as maybe you'd expect, but every time she got the ball, you could feel a real buzz in the crowd.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's so powerful.
Yeah, it's safe to say that Harlequins managed her really, really well.
They doubled up on her. Their outside centre, Pena, she was fantastic, and she was tackling everything, but she particularly paid attention to Alona, which was really good to see. Ellie Kildunn, very interesting to watch the way she's effectively constantly on the move.
Yeah,
she was running from touchline to touchline to get her hands on the ball at the right moment. It was really impressive.
I couldn't agree more. I also thought there was some really good battles in the front. I thought it was Sarah Byrne, really, really powerful, really, really hard to take down. Had a really good game, and I know she's usually paired with Hannah Bottoman, who is also an England prop. So there was some performances in that side, and I think there was a couple of heads-to-heads as well. So I think Lark Atkin-Davis, who's the Bristol Bears hooker, was up against Connie Wright, I think her name was, who's like the sub-England hooker. So that was an interesting head-to-head. It was just, all in all, a really entertaining game of rugby. And as you say, I kind of agree with what you're saying, like in an uncondescending way. It was like watching a side that have been coached some really good skills, but you can tell they don't focus purely on working off of a playbook. Like, there's encouragement to play with a bit of freedom, use your own skill set to try and unlock the defence without kind of being on a prescribed playbook, which I think is kind of what you're alluding to. Like, you see the
Yeah,
modern day professional game where it seems like every single move is being dictated out of a notebook, where this just felt a
yeah.
bit more free and natural, and it was really fun to watch.
Yeah, you can see that they've taken that ethos of you run to space or you
Mm.
run for space rather than when you watch a lot of the men's game, they're running for contact because they're trying to create space elsewhere. It's a sort of, without sounding overly highfalutin about it, it's a bit more of a tactical chess game, how to create space in different places and do different things in different bits of the pitch. Whereas this is a lot more run to space, react to what's happening, and play off that. And it makes for a very entertaining, kind of quite fluid game because both teams are constantly having to work off a lot of offloads, a lot of loose balls. There's a lot of turnovers and transition in there, and it's all about, okay, right, we're in transition. How can we get this ball to space? How can we attack the space as quickly as possible? I mean, the only disappointment across the weekend was actually that there weren't more PWR games on. I was quite keen on the Saturday to watch the Sale against Gloucester Hartpury game. Obviously, being a Gloucester fan myself, and it wasn't on the telly. I mean, I think it was on a quite obscure streaming site. I couldn't quite work it out. So it's a bit of a shame there wasn't more of it on, and I'm hoping there will be more on.
It does feel like a missed opportunity not showing more of it, especially when you look at the table. So I know the semi-finalists are now settled, but going into kind of those rounds of rugby,
Yeah,
there was still a lot to play for, and it's incredibly tight at the top of the table. There's a lot at play. There's a lot of people who probably enjoy watching it, and I think it's the sort of game that'll be really good for a neutral, more casual fan to watch as well and have as an introduction to rugby.
yeah, I completely agree. I think, well, you can see the age of the crowd is much younger. A lot of young women, a lot of young boys as well, watching the game. It's a much lower age profile than your average men's club game. And I think that's the reason why the playing number growth is so high in the women's side, right? Because, if you're trying to attract a new age of fan and inspire them to play the game, it's that old adage of you can't be what you can't see. But there is a viable path to being a professional athlete in rugby for women, and being able to go to games at the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever it is, to then get inspired to do that. That's a great way to grow the popularity of the game. Where I think a lot of clubs are playing the short money at the moment is they're pricing young fans out of the game at the moment. I don't think Quins are actually one of them. I think Quins do a kids ticket. I know Gloucester do a kids ticket that's very well priced, but there are a number of clubs that aren't doing that, and I think are missing a trick on how to attract the next generation of fans and players.
Yeah, so that kind of leads me into my next question: is there anything that Premiership Rugby could learn from PWR, even though PWR is a very new established competition? I feel like there might be things that could be learned.
I think there's a lot to learn in terms of how to promote a game. I think they're pretty unshy about what they promote within the game. If you see the adverts for it, it's very much looking at the physical nature of it. There's a lot of people putting in big hits. And I think that's quite true across the way, certainly in the sevens and in the international game. You see a lot of that kind of stuff. They're pretty unafraid of that aspect of the game. And I think rugby as a whole needs to utilise that to its advantage in its marketing in every facet of the game. I think we need to stop apologising for that. David Flatman spoke very well on it recently. Let's stop apologising for this bit of physical game and just enjoy it. Because that's what a lot of people get into. That's what they get into rugby for.
You look at so if you look at Lawrence Dallaglio's comments on another podcast, he was saying you look at UFC. What are the highlight reels? It's the knockout moments. It's the moments where there is very high violence. So why in rugby is the mentality so different?
Yeah, I shared a thing the other day about it was a clip of the best moments from the 2024 Super League, which is the rugby league set up in England. And the first highlight was an absolute rib-breaking hit, and it was spectacular, and it was really, really violent. And I watched it, and I went, "Oh, I'm gonna have to watch a bit more rugby league this year." I think actually, it's great. I just don't think we should apologise for that. So I think that's the first thing. I think they're pretty unafraid of what they're trying to promote, and that's that kind of boldness in marketing. I think is going to be the thing that helps rugby break through a little bit more. And then on the whole, I think the women's game so far, and hopefully this will continue, has been unafraid to do things differently and not just follow down the path of the old traditions and just try to mirror the men's game. So I mean, cards on the table, I'm not a traditionalist, generally speaking, but I understand why a lot of people are, right. And I understand, something like the Six Nations, yeah, all right, you box that off. That is what it is. But I think the men's game needs to think a little bit more outside the box in how it opens the game up. Something like the promotion relegation playoff in the Six Nations, I think is a no-brainer. Give something for other teams to aspire to. Taking a Lions tour to Argentina or the USA or France or somewhere different, or taking a Lions tour, some sort of Lions tour to one of those nations could be another way to do it. And I think the women's Lions team is in its sort of nascency, but they are already talking about how they can take it to different places. To the likes of the USA and Canada and France. And they're not going to be bound by the constraints of the men's game's traditions, and they're going to go and do something a bit different. I think those are lessons that the men's game has to start taking.
I am actually in complete agreement there. I think those are two very good things to take on. I also just think that the women's game are creating personalities and individuals who become more than just the game. So we got players like Ellie Kildan, Alona Mar, who are becoming stars in their own right and having followings, not just because they like rugby, but because they're interested in these individuals. I still feel that men's rugby is missing those personalities and promoting those individuals, those characters within the game. It still feels quite closed off to the average Joe public.
I think until we stop judging players for wanting to promote themselves, we'll never get past that. It's that kind of tall poppy syndrome, isn't it? As soon as someone sort of posts it, because you saw it with the likes of Joe Marler. Now, I get that Joe Marler maybe hasn't always been to everyone's taste, but Joe Marler was always determined to do things his own way. Ellis Genge is a similar character, right? They want to do things their own way and on their own terms. And you often see the kind of backlash in the social media and from some of the journalists as well, and the ex-pros in many ways, against the way that these guys are talking and acting outside of the pitch. There's a lot of, do your talking on the pitch kind of mentality. And I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I think you have to start saying to people that, your brand is what's going to create an income here. This is what's going to maximize your value and your earnings across your career and after your career. And it's a short career being a professional athlete and being a professional rugby athlete. Your career can be over at any time. I think don't be afraid to step outside the lines on things, and and that's not chucking your teammates under the bus or digging out your coach online, but being out there, being visible, promoting yourself, being an online brand. I just think that's things they've got to do and they've got to encourage.
Well, what I will say is here at Rucks, Mauls Oval Balls, we welcome any player of any level who wants to come and improve their image and their presence online. If they want to come on the podcast, we are unashamedly open for business. So yes.
And if you want to improve your image specifically, being pictured next to the two of us can only really improve that by comparison.
Absolutely. So yes, that is an open invitation to anyone within the game who wants to talk rugby. So moving away from PWR, Premiership Rugby Cup, I will have to hold my hands up, Rory. I spent my weekend either A, at Kingsholm Stadium, or B, out of the house not watching rugby, sadly, on the Saturday. So I'm going to lean heavily on you to inform me and the listener about what's going on in the Premiership Rugby Cup.
Yeah, so it was the last round of the pool stage. So for anyone that doesn't know, the Premiership Rugby Cup is effectively, I suppose you could probably call it the FA Cup of the English.
A very loose comparison.
Because it only really concerns the Premiership and some, but not all of the Championship sides. It's not a great comparison, but effectively it's the cup competition to go along with the leagues. So it's, as I said, it's a mixture of Premiership and Championship teams. It is not particularly well supported or promoted at the moment. It's not really got that kind of prestigious element to it. I mean, partly because it's quite a new competition, but also by its nature, it occurs in the sort of fallow periods between league games during the international periods. So the first block was through the Autumn Nations. This one's obviously through the Six Nations. So you're not getting the star players. It's a mixture of often guys who need to get back to fitness or you want to get fitness up and youth. So if you're a rugby nose, it's really, really interesting because you see a lot of the players you wouldn't actually see on a week-to-week basis actually get a shot at senior men's rugby. So you end up with some quite interesting games. So I watched on the Saturday the Quinn Saracens game. So Saracens picked a pretty youthful side. There were a few pros dotted around, but primarily it was a youthful side against a pretty strong Quins team with the likes of Wyn Jones, Alex Dombrand, Joe Launchbury was playing. Tyrone Green played for a lot of it.
Pretty strong lineup.
Yeah, there were some strong pros in there. And Saracens with, yeah, as I say, a primarily youthful team, actually ended up coming out on top at the Stoop, 30 points to 29. So they had a couple of pros. So Alex Good on his sort of comeback from the injury trail was playing at fullback.
Nothing says youthful like Alex Good.
No, yeah, he brought the average age up from about 20 to 30. But outside of that, I mean, the front rowers are sort of, I would guess, Saracen's second and third string senior pros. Tizard was in there, who's played quite a few times, obviously, but primarily it was a lot of the youth. So you had likes of Mitchellow, who was the former England 20s captain from last year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Harry Eake.
Max Eek.
Max Eek, sorry, Max. Max Eek, who was playing on the flank. Someone who we called Sadeki recently, but they were pronounced it as Shodake on the commentary. So now I don't entirely know what we're meant to do with that, but I'm going to go with what they were saying. So Shodake was playing in the second row. Angus Hall, who's been talked up as being
he's pretty handy.
Player coming up. Yeah. Louis Johnson, I think, has come down from Newcastle recently to play at Saracens. He's is one with a lot of promise in him. Tobias Elliott was playing on the wing. Brandon Jackson on the other wing. So a lot of youth players, long and short of it. And it was quite an interesting game because, I mean, Alex Dombrand at times looked like a dad playing against the kids in the garden. And he was sort of just skittling people at various points and had a point to prove, I think. I suspect he's probably a bit miffed about not being in the England senior men's, although he's now been called up, I think.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I say it's a strong Quinn side. So they're packed. Wyn Jones, Joe Launchbury, Stefan Levies, George Hammond, Will Evans, Don Brandt.
So that's a pack that could run out in the Premiership any week. So that's a strong pack.
Yeah. Yeah, so Riley is their second, Sam Riley is their second choice hooker, I think, at the moment.
Yeah.
So he started. Danny Kerr and Jared Evans in the halfbacks.
That's a lot of experience.
Senior. Ben Waghorn was the youth player that's coming through, very promising. Will Joseph trying to get a bit of form back, so he was in there. And then Cassius Cleves, Nick David, and Lee Halfpenny. So this is a very senior Quinn
That's
side.
a very good side for a Premiership Rugby Cup game.
So that is a side that says to me, we are determined to go out and win this comfortably. And they didn't. They were beaten by a much hungrier and much more, I suppose you could say, desperate Saracen side, very desperate to prove themselves. Tobias Elliott and Brandon Jackson were particularly impressive. There was a bit of a challenge laid down with the commentators beforehand about whether Tobias Elliott could impose himself more on the game. And he actually ended up playing the sort of closest analogy I could say to it would be quite similarly to the French wingers in the last game against England, where he was sort of popping up on both sides of the wing and creating tries. But Brandon Jackson finished off. He got one. He was very impressive throughout the day. Cassius Cleves unfortunately came off injured after half time. Looked like another bad hamstring injury. So his sort of run of injury luck is is still going. It's unfortunate because he up to that point he'd been having a very good game.
He feels like one waiting to break out, and it just these injuries keeps delaying that and delaying that and delaying that.
My gut feel is he's one of those where he's obviously physically still trying to equalise between what he can do in spurts and what it's possible to do on a repeated basis on the rugby field. And some young players just go through that where for a couple of years they just keep getting injured because their body just hasn't quite aligned to it.
And sometimes you just try and do a kick-off at a touch game and it just gets the better of you.
I was going to say, as you well know, as a man who decided to start kicking at the age of 35. 34, sorry. But yeah, some good performances. A nice moment when both of Kieran Bracken's boys both came onto the pitch.
That's good.
Half,
they're both very, very exciting as well. High ceilings on both of them.
They both played really well. I think is it Jack Bracken plays on the wing?
Yes, Jack Bracken, very good finisher. Yeah,
he finished a very good one at the weekend where he skittled. I think it might have been Jared Evans, but apologies if I'm doing him a disservice. It was Jared was on Nick David, and when he really didn't have, particularly the power to weight ratio that you should have think, but he just had his determination, skittled him and finished off a try extremely well. And they both look very exciting at the moment. I've seen a bit of them at the under-20 level, but they look like players that have got a real future in the professional game, which is nice to see.
Well, that sounds awfully promising from a Saracens perspective.
We'll get into some more of the Saracens youth a bit later on from the under-18s, but they've got a real conveyor belt of youth coming through at the moment, which is great to see. And then outside of that, there wasn't a lot more on the telly from the Premiership Rugby Cup. But I did want to draw everyone's attention to one particular result from the weekend. Welcome to Gloucester Hour. Exeter Chiefs 14, Gloucester under 14s 22. This was I've seen the extended highlights of this game. So Exeter turned up with their strongest possible team for this one.
Yeah, that's their strongest side they could put out, basically.
It's literally their first team. To give you some comparison on that for Gloucester, in their pack, they've got players that I just don't even know who they are. Allport, James, Stevens, that's their back row. I don't know who any of them are. Cockgreave on one wing, Hillman Cooper on the other. I mean, I've sort of heard of them both.
I've heard of Hillman Cooper, but I haven't heard of the other one.
He's been in and around the squad a bit, but he's not had a lot of go to him. It's if you were being generous, you'd say it was a third string Gloucester side.
I didn't know Gloucester had that many players. Where do they dig them up from?
Well, yeah. I think we nicked a few from Hartbury for the week.
Right.
Just Exeter once again incapable of getting over the line. A couple of really nice tries for the Gloucester wings, Hillman Cooper and Cockgreave, who both scored some extra tries. They also got a penalty try as well to run things off. Excitingly for Gloucester, we had on the bench the Ben Solomon brothers.
Oh yeah,
who are our twin props. They are exciting. I'm really hoping that they both make it because something really gets me going about having a set of twin props. That's really, really something that, that tickles my...
Spoiler alert, I've been made aware from my weekend at the Under-18s Academy that at the year under-18s, there's a pair of twin props coming through worth being excited about. But we'll save that for another day.
Fabulous stuff.
But yeah, so I know that the Ben Solomon twins were at Bristol Bears last year and Gloucester picked them up. I've always thought they looked pretty handy when they did get minutes, so I'm glad that they've been picked up by Gloucester.
And they seem like good fun. I've seen them sort of on the Gloucester podcast and things, and they've got a bit about them, so they seem like they've got the personality to carry them. So hopefully they keep their development. From a Chiefs perspective, I don't know where they go from here. Is the honest answer.
It does feel like, even though I keep saying it can't get much lower, this feels like a new low. If hearing the names you said, I didn't recognise any of them, and I feel like I've got a pretty good handle of players in the Premiership sides. I don't know who you're talking about there. I certainly knew the Exeter side, and for them to lose at home to that team is not great. I'm not going to dig out Exeter Chiefs too much, but yes, obviously something is not working and not going right.
I just don't know where they go at the moment. It doesn't seem like they're developing at all. The closest analogy I've got at the moment is Manchester United in the Premier League, where you just can't see any improvement. They just got that feel about them where it's a team that's not very good and isn't improving.
Is it just devoid of confidence and therefore just unable to get things over the line because there's just this inevitability that, well, we're going to lose again, and then you just manifest it into happening?
You can't use that excuse when you're playing not much more than the under-18s.
No, yeah, well, I think that's also fair. Like, on paper, I know in the Premiership, Exeter could say, well, look at the salary cap and the kind of we can't be as competitive. I don't think that argument can be used in this situation because I imagine the average wage bill of both those starting teams was probably heavily higher on Exeter's side than it is on Gloucester's side.
I suspect the wage bill on the Gloucester pitch would have paid for the post-match supplements for the Exeter first team. So I don't think they've got that to fall back on in this occasion. So, yeah, I mean, worrying times for Chiefs because if their senior men's side can't put away that Gloucester side, I mean, basically Gloucester have given up on the competition at this point, right? And they won that. They've managed to get themselves through to the next round because Exeter had won that group comfortably because they've been playing their senior men's side up to this point.
Okay.
So they'd won all their other games. And they were obviously continuing to use it as a way to keep the first team fit, but also work on some things. And from the highlights I saw, I couldn't see much that they were working on.
Okay, well, we hope Chiefs go better. Obviously, that means they're still in the quarterfinals. I think Ealing Trailfinders are the only championship side to make it to the knockout round. I think again for the second year running, continuing to put their hand up as a force to be kind of recognised and not ignored. And I believe they've got Northampton Saints, so I might see if I can try and go to that game.
They do. So they've got Northampton at Franklin's Gardens on the first, Exeter playing Sale on the first. On the Friday beforehand, Bath are playing Quinns, and Newcastle, who go through as top seeds, are playing Gloucester at Kingston Park. So that'd be an interesting one to see what both those teams do.
It'll be really good if Newcastle can make a good fist of this, I think.
Well, I mean, Gloucester won it last season and put a real focus on it once they got through the pool stages and decided that was a way to measure some level of success and development. And, I think you've seen some fruits of what they put together this season. So, until Newcastle take up our offer of putting together the battered bastards of the Northeast, I think that's the best way for them to do it.
Which we are still waiting to be contacted by Steve Diamond and anyone at Newcastle Falcons Rugby Club. The offer still remains. We are more than happy to lend our services to recreate the battered bastards of the Northeast. But yeah, so that's the Premiership Rugby Cup. Thank you, Rory, for entertaining us on that part of our weekend of rugby without Six Nations and Premiership Rugby. The next thing, so I spent my entire Sunday at Kingsholm Stadium. I was there from 10 a.m. and I didn't leave until 9 p.m. And I was sat in what can only be described a freezer up in the media deck, watching 6 games of rugby back to back to back to back to back to back. And what an occasion it was. It was really it had a festival feel to it. It felt good fun. The rugby was really good. The crowd came and went as different games were on. Obviously, Gloucester were up first, and there was quite a good crowd in to watch the local side. Yeah. And I just thought, I was sat there in the media deck. There was one other person from the media watching this, and I was just sitting there thinking,
really?
What a wasted opportunity.
Everyone's just having a weekend off.
Are you having a weekend off, or just like yourself watching it via the live stream instead of being there in the person?
Feels like a missed opportunity for a future.
I do think the academy level of rugby is something that isn't pushed a great deal. It is only a kind of 5-6 week competition, but it felt like a festival of rugby to celebrate what is kind of the last games these under-18s will be playing together in, because once this is done, a lot of them won't be in that age group anymore, and it's either they get a senior academy contract or they're off to play grassroots rugby. And I feel like more could be done to celebrate it. But let's not get negative about what I thought was a really positive day of rugby.
Well, absolutely. I think. Do you want to maybe run us through the order of results? And
yeah, absolutely. The first game started off. It was Gloucester versus Sale. It was safe to say it was quite obvious it was a 10:30 kickoff because a lot of the teenagers hadn't woken up. Yeah. It was also incredibly cold. I can't underestimate how much that would have impacted. The first half was incredibly cagey. The game ended 25-7 in the end. It was 7-5 at half-time to Sale, and then Gloucester just kind of turned up the skill level, and the hands started to work. In terms of players that kind of stood out for me, so John O'Balding, who was the captain for Gloucester under-18s, earlier in the week signed a senior academy contract for the first time, which is a vote of confidence in itself. You could kind of see that he has that leadership quality, and he kind of stands out. There's a six called Henry Horsfall, who I thought looked real busy, and definitely one to watch. On the Sale side, they had some. It was an interesting Sale side to watch. They felt like a mirror image of the senior team. They had a really quite big forward pack for the age group.
The tight end was a meaty lad, wasn't he?
Yeah, so Lawrence Ogbonya, as we've said in the past about being a really good tight head prop, thighs and arse. It's all about thighs and arse, and he was kind of textbook. He used it to great effect. He was very difficult to tackle. But yeah, so that game ended 25-7. The next game up was Bristol Bears versus Newcastle Falcons. It was probably a step up in quality, although not quite the same level as some of the latter games. The Falcons came out punching. They came out physically. They were strong. A couple of players to watch. So Patrick Hogg, he was head and shoulders their best player. He looked a real unit, and he was basically at the heart of everything Newcastle tried. But on the Bristol side, they had just too much quality. They had a couple of players who just had that extra layer of skill, which really made them stand out.
Fullback, is it Evan Morris?
Evan Morris, yeah. He basically single-handedly created everything for Bristol. He broke the Newcastle line about 5 or 6 times. And was rapid. I also think I saw something in the Bristol Bears hooker, Kieran Hill, who's also their captain. He's got that work rate that you'd want of a modern-day hooker. He looked like someone who might have it to go get one of those senior academy contracts and maybe make something of himself. There's a few others that really stood out, but I won't go into too much detail and do a breakdown of every single player, because, try to keep the podcasts, under 4 hours. The next game was an interesting one. So it was Exeter Chiefs versus an invitational side from North Wales, RGC, which I think stood for, and apologies to Griff on my pronunciation here, it was Rugby Gwynedd Cymru, Rugby Gogledd Cymru.
Rugby Gogledd Cymru.
That. Don't know what it stands for. But, it was a North Wales academy setup, and they were pretty competitive, but Exeter Chiefs beat them 19-0.
The Chiefs 13 you and I were texting about, he looked stocky.
Yes, so Ollie Batson played in the 13 shirt for Exeter, and he was brilliant. So I spoke with one of the Exeter Chiefs coaches after the game, and he basically said to me, yeah, he's mustard, he's good. So he's a name to look out for. He really stood out to me. Also, the scrum half, George Newman, for me, looks like a high rugby IQ type player. Then the quality started to step up here from this point onwards.
Yeah.
Harlequins versus Yorkshire Academy. So it ended 82-5 to Harlequins. So on paper, a bit of a, humping.
Well, I think just to explain Yorkshire Academy to people. So this is an RFU run academy in Yorkshire, because there's no top level professional side in Yorkshire at the moment, with Leeds having fallen away and Doncaster aren't quite there yet. So the RFU run this academy independently at the clubs, right?
I was talking to one of the parents of the academy lads, and they were saying it is quite difficult for them because there isn't a clear path and a clear development for them once they get to the end of their academy contracts. Like, where do they go from here? And he was saying that it's a real shame. It doesn't seem like Newcastle wants to look at Yorkshire Academy, which would be their nearest team. It does feel tricky. Not to say that meant that these players were not kind of the same quality. I was very excited by 2 of their props, Miles Lister and Sam Bland, who absolutely dominated the Harlequins scrum to start off with.
Yeah, I think a couple of guys will have been looking at them and thinking we should be considering them.
So you might see that. It was also worth noting that there's another Umanga coming through the ranks. So the Yorkshire Academy 10.
So I presume this is Tanner Umanga's brother, Jacob Umanga's dad, right, was involved in a lot of the rugby league in that area, right? So there are a few Umangas knocking around up there.
But he certainly had a look of Jacob Umango, who's gone to play in Italy. He was a similar sort of style, style of player. So it's always interesting when a name like that pops out of a team sheet.
For those in the know, Tanner Umango was one of the greats.
Oh, 100%. Like, yeah, one of the GOATs, as they say these days. Because, you know, I've spent the day around the under-18s crowd, so I'm down with this lingo.
Bit of the old Gen Z lingo.
Bit of the Gen Z lingo. But yeah, so Harlequins 82.5, Skibbity Sigma. No, I'll stop before because I don't know what I just said. So
what you said.
I don't.
Scat singing.
Yeah. I don't know what I was doing there, but yeah. So for Harlequins, overall the team were really impressive. But there's 3 players who I think is worth bringing out. So Sean Sharp, the fullback, absolutely mustard.
Fantastic. He was fantastic.
He had a very, very good game. He was very dangerous with ball in hand and had a very accurate kicking boot to kind of go along with it. Tate Williams, the number 8, was dynamic as hell. He made about 3 or 4 breaks, hard to tackle. Looked like he is going to
big
go
and
places.
rangy, wasn't he?
And the loose head, Gerald Gorleku, he was everywhere. High work rate. Yeah. He also covered hooker for a little bit of time, and he picked up a try just by being in the right place and having that high work rate. And I love seeing that in props.
I thought all 3 of those looked like players that would be worth keeping an eye out for.
So it's also probably worth mentioning Jack Tyler picked up 4 tries. So, you know, he's obviously doing something right. There we go on to Saracens versus Leicester. Saracens are a quality outfit. As we spoke to earlier, that young team at the Premiership Rugby Cup, that's a product of an academy that's working. This under-18 side is just more evidence to support that. There are a number of players in this side who I think will go on to have successful careers in rugby. Jack Marshall, the 7, incredibly busy, tackles everything that moves. Asa Stewart Harris, the 9, he's what I call him a quick thinker. He was very speedy around the base. He made decisions quickly. Exactly what you want in a 9. Then the back 3, Zach Finch, Noah Calori and Ben Morrow. They had
all very
everything.
Good,
all very good in different ways.
Yeah, but one of those was a real standout, I thought in particular. Noah Calori looked like a very natural right winger to me.
He just has some natural attributes that don't necessarily get trained in people, and you're just blessed with them. He was basically the lone chaser at kickoffs because he had this standing leap that had him towering over any other player, and he was able to jump up and try and tap it back. Didn't work every time, no, but you could see that physical ability just from the side. Like he was getting head and shoulders above everyone else just from a standing leap.
But he was also, I saw he was getting involved as a link man, setting up.
Yeah. So
I saw him jackal at least for 1 penalty.
Wasn't selfish. He was getting himself the end of moves. He picked up a couple of tries. Yeah, very excited. And Ben Morrow, again, another really accurate kicker in the 15 shirt. So it looks like this generation of player, there's some really excellent place kickers coming through as fullbacks, which, you know, is always quite interesting.
I don't hate it.
And on the Leicester side, They were outplayed. This Leicester side again is in like the mirror image of the senior side, but they were just outclassed on the day. But I'd say that there's one individual who for me really stood out was George Marsh, who was probably head and shoulders their best player, both figuratively and metaphorically. He's one hell of a unit.
The Leicester pack as a whole looked like of real farmer stock, but he looked like the sort of guy who'd been wrestling the pigs on the farm. He was a big boy.
He was, and like he used his size well. He picked up a couple of tries. But that takes us to the final, the game to end and round off the day, which was Northampton Saints versus Bath. It ended with a victory to the rightful winners. They've been runner-up for the last 4 years in various different versions of this tournament. And they won 31-14, which was Northampton Saints. For me, they were a cut above any other side on the day.
Yeah, they were very impressive. Whatever they're doing in the Saints Academy, they're building players of a really high skill level across the park.
Yeah, I genuinely would be able to have something good to say about every single one of the players that stepped foot on the pitch for Northampton Saints.
I'd say one of the big standouts was the left winger. Tamori, was it?
Charlie Tamani, 16 years old as well.
He was 16.
He's 16, so he's still got a couple of years left at this age level.
He was enormous.
He's very explosive, very quick, huge handoff on him. He's one to watch, 100% one to watch.
Just big thighs, powerful, stocky. He had that Manu Tuilagi kind of running style about him.
Yeah. He's definitely one to watch. It'll be a few years off yet, but if he develops, as it was, because I was talking to some people from Premiership Rugby, and they are aware of him, and they're saying, like, everyone's very excited by him. He's just incredibly raw at the moment. But, remember the name Charlie Tamani, I'd say. But the entire Northampton backline was mighty impressive. It looked like a backline that had been very, very well coached. And the skills, the handling was just kind of incredible. It was just really, really impressive. I think a couple of names to also pull out on the Northampton side. I think Seep Walter, the 8, was mighty impressive. He was at the heart of everything good for, like, go forward in the tight. Jack Lewis, the 6, was just everywhere and had a huge work rate. But I could probably say something good about each and every single one of them. On the Bath side, they were a set-piece team for me. Their maul was unstoppable. They knew it. They tried to play for that in their advantage. And Northampton just kind of starved them of possession in the second half and just kind of kept the ball to kind of prevent Bath from doing that and strangling Northampton out of the game. So, like, a number of their forwards are really quite exciting. So Fred Cartwright, their hooker, looks really busy. Fred Kempton did a really good job at line-out, was stealing a few line-outs. He looked really imposing. And their two Eds in 6 and 7, Ed Salisbury and Ed Elliott, looked really, really busy in defence. And they've got the next big thing coming through at fly-half in James Lineker. Probably didn't get his chance to show what he could do in this game because Northampton really starved them and they were putting on some big hits on him to really ruffle his feathers, and it worked. But you could tell he's got that silky smooth style, which is why Bath have kind of invested in him having a full-time contract at a young age already. So, like, a lot of high-quality players were on display who I think will become names that we will be talking about when this podcast is running episode 199 of the 2028-2029 season.
Well, I mean, look forward to that. I mean, I suppose that's one of the things you've got to remember is if you're playing under 18s level rugby, unlike if you're watching football, very few of these guys will break through for another 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah.
They won't be physically ready for it. But a couple of years of under 20 under their belt, maybe in the under 20s international setup, you will start seeing some of these names get talked about the same way as Henry Pollock, for example. It's that sort of 18 to 20, 22 bracket is really where the development becomes very exciting. I think it's probably why there's a lot of exciting talk about this potential rookie league coming into English rugby to give these guys the opportunity to play competitive rugby week in, week out up to that sort of. We're hoping, I think, the under-23 level.
Yeah, I really hope so. And I think there is a glaring opportunity there. And interestingly enough, when I was talking to Premiership Rugby on the day, they'd seen something I'd put on our social media platforms about it. They're aware of it and they're looking at it. They're not sure if it can actually be something just yet. But the interesting thing is that we saw announced by the RPA this week some new rookie contracts.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that the terminology referred to them as rookies. And then there's also this story coming out about this rookie league. It seems like that's a line that's being investigated.
Well, I know Bill Sweeney was talking about it, as part of his current PR tour to save his job. But he's been bringing this up as something that could really improve youth development in this country. And in theory, it could. My only slight worry on it is it's another overhead for the clubs. Is it something you can easily monetize? Possibly not. You might be able to, but possibly not to the same level. Hopefully all that gets kind of ironed out because I'd love to watch it. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, well, we only get one game around the Premiership Rugby Cup on TV. If you don't put it on TV, you're probably not going to get big crowds to it.
No.
How's it going to grow? So that's my worry. I think it's an excellent idea. It just needs to be executed well.
Yeah, absolutely. But so the under-18 finals then, David, what are your sort of overall thoughts on it as an occasion, as a day? What did you come away thinking of where I guess English youth talent is at the moment?
So I came away from it feeling generally really, really positive. I think that there is a little bit of a divide between North and South at the moment. Perhaps that's to do with catchment areas and stuff, because ultimately the league is separated into North and South conferences. The Southern teams won all of their games bar the final when Northampton beat Bath. But in general, the quality of rugby was high in most places. And the really interesting for me is that each team played in a style that matched their senior team. So obviously there's a style being coached through the systems at these clubs to try and make the players already in a position to kind of step into their senior clubs if and when they make it.
Yeah. Do you get the impression that... So I think back to when we were younger and watching, the great All Black sides of the sort of noughties and 2010s, and there was a lot put on the type of skills that were drilled into those kinds of players, and the difference in skill level particularly between English players and Kiwi players at that time, but really between the Kiwis and virtually everyone else in reality. Do you get the impression that gap has closed, or even tightened shut completely at the moment in terms of the abilities of these players at that level? Because I didn't get the impression that watching it on the telly, you might have a better view from in the stands. Obviously, there were some big players, some physical players, but actually, I wasn't looking at it going, "Oh, that looks like 15 guys who've spent a lot of time in the gym rather than working on their skills."
It definitely came across to me as this is ball skills and the fundamentals of rugby seem to be the main priority of the coaching, rather than making them as big and jacked as possible. Yeah, I think so. Some of the moves that were done, there were some really clever set piece moves. There were some really nice backs moves that were pulled together. There were some real shows of just like skill that were on display, and it's really promising from an England perspective, because these are players that are going to be coming through and maturing into bigger athletes naturally, but are going to have some really, really high levels of skill to go with it, because that seems to be the focus of the training.
It feels like a bit of a sea change in the last sort of 5 to 10 years in terms of the type of player that's coming through in England.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I'm very, very optimistic. I think we bash the RFU, we bash how things go. I think the academy and youth rugby is certainly something that is being done right, and it is creating some very good players that I think could only strengthen an England side, which is already starting to see fruit of that change that would have happened 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah. I think it's exciting. I think there's been a real recognition of, with the success of what Northampton have done in the last couple of years in particular, but I'd probably look at a bit further afield, the difference between how French teams are playing. And, there seems to be a real recognition that if you instill these kind of ball skills and this kind of ambition, you develop better players in the long run.
I think it has been recognised. Does it lead us to a point where we can start to pick players who play abroad? Because the quality of players coming through academies may stop that argument of saying, well, we can't afford to let players leave because there's not enough players coming through the system. Oh, there's enough players coming through the system now.
Yeah. I think we're almost at that kind of level of maturity of the game, right? Where actually we're not a global game yet, and maybe we'll never be truly global. But we might be at the point where actually there's enough talent for us to say we don't have to be quite isolationist in terms of our players, and which I'm hoping will be the case. Something I think is worth talking about, David, is the development of the championship, with the news about London Wasps potentially. I think they've now secured their site for a new ground. London Irish been bought out by the Jordan Group, fronted by Eddie Jordan. There's some rumblings about Worcester and a potential announcement there in the near future as well. Where do you see the new sort of, as they call it, Prem 1, Prem 2 competition? Have you heard any rumblings about what that might look like, or when we might get an announcement on it?
So I really hope we do get an announcement soon, because it's been awfully quiet in that space for far too long. It was announced several months ago that they were going to do this and launch a revamped second tier of English rugby. It's well documented how the Championship clubs kind of respond to that, saying, if you're going to do that, you need to have us at the table. We won't agree to anything unless we've got kind of a say in where things go, which I think, well, obviously, hopefully the RFU are also realising that's something they need to do, namely around making sure that there is a kind of fluency between the Premiership and the second tier, the so-called Prem 2, which is what we're all assuming it will be called, but actually hasn't been announced yet. I really, really hope this does happen, but I understand the rhetoric around it's not fair parachuting Wasps, London Irish, Worcester back into the Championship level. I completely get that, and I can completely get why National League sides and some Championship sides would be like, what the hell? Why are they be giving this free pass into this division? I get it. But on the flip side, they're trying to launch this second tier of competition that is more competitive and that there's hopefully going to bring back the realistic chances of promotion and relegation, and it meaning something. If you come bottom of the Premiership, you're going to play the team that's the top of the Premiership to decide who's in the Premiership one the following year.
I think we've just got to take a view on this one and just say to everyone, well, too bad.
Yeah.
Because we've got 3 brands there.
That's it. It's the brands.
They've got financial back here, pretty much oven ready. You just got to be realistic and say, look, we can't expand this competition and bring in, I don't know, Otley and Blackheath and, I don't know, name another.
London Welsh,
and just hope that they get to where they're going. You just got to be realistic about it. You know, that Leeds couldn't get a club going with all the backing they ever had. You know, but we've got 3 brands that could actually make it. So I think it's just got to be a case of, well, too bad.
Yeah, as harsh as that is, I think that is the approach we're going to have. And there will be uproar, but again, the same way there was uproar when Northampton Saints changed their badge, it quickly gets forgotten, which is what happened. And I think the only thing that would really need to be cemented to make this work is that they need to secure some sort of TV rights for the second tier of rugby, so those teams get exposure to a wider audience other than just those who tune into YouTube streams or just go to those home games.
That's the only way this competition works, right? Is if we suddenly get... I suspect what they're hoping is they can convince TNT to become the rugby channel and to do this, right? Whether they'll get that, who knows? Do you think it's likely to coincide with them re-expanding the Premiership?
So that's a bit of a mystery, because the question mark is how many teams go into this second tier. Because if you add those 3 teams into it now, on top of what's there already, like, that ain't going to be there's 10 in the Premiership. There ain't going to be 10 in the second tier unless they really, really get harsh and cut a load of teams out, which would feel... I don't see how those Championship clubs would ever agree to that.
Feels like 12 and 12. So like a fair...
For simple mathematics, yes, that feels like a fairer number. That hasn't been announced in what we've seen so far. That's what they're going to do. So whether that happens, I don't know. I would like to see it, but just purely because I want to watch more rugby. I want my season tickets to have more value to it as a Northampton Saints fan, because 2 more teams in Premiership means another 2 home games for me to go to.
More income for the clubs.
It's a bit of a no-brainer to me. I just hope whoever makes these decisions start sharing these ideas soon so the fans can start getting their head around it, because it's going to be change. And there's one thing we know for certain is that rugby fans do like a moan when things don't stay exactly as it has been or doesn't reflect what's happened in the past. But I'm like you, Rory, I'm not necessarily a traditionalist. I think trying new things is a good thing. If we want the Premiership to compete with the URC and to compete with top 14, I think that starts with having a really competitive second tier of rugby to push the guys in the top tier on to keep getting better and not get complacent.
And if you look at the regional coverage of the Championship, if you can combine that into a coordinated competition with the Premiership, you suddenly go from having a very London and Southwest focused professional competition to actually having reasonably good national coverage. I mean, whether someone like Caldy stays up in the northwest, who knows? But you've got the likes of Doncaster, Nottingham, Coventry.
Yeah, it certainly spreads the competition further around the country. The other outlandish idea I had was that let's just bring in an NFL-style draft system and make that a really fun day on TV for everyone.
It's been talked about. It's been talked about. I don't know. The thing about the draft, the NFL draft, is the focus they have on the college ball, right? So these guys are already stars when they go into draft day.
Yeah.
Until you can make academy rugby somewhat aligned to that kind of.
I'm trying, Rory. I'm trying.
And you're doing your best. I mean, if we could get a few more TikToks from you, David, we might be able to justify a draft.
Well, okay. You've heard it here first. I'm going to go on a mission to try and turn academy rugby into such a high profile, even bigger profile than the senior men's game that is going to justify a draft system. I have a feeling a long road ahead of me. But Prem 1, Prem 2, I'm all for it. There's a lot of things that need to be worked out in the background of it, but I think in principle, I'm just waiting for that announcement to drop. I don't think we'll see Wasps and London Irish part of the first season. I think Worcester we will.
Presumably still need to build their stadium.
So unless they've got an agreement to share, a stadium somewhere, which I don't know if they do, and same with London Irish. Then there's the thing of how do you spin up an entire backroom staff and playing group in such a short period of time? I'm sure they could do it.
The Boys networks will come out in force on that one.
Yeah, but so I have a feeling we'll probably only see Worcester in the first kind of iteration, but there'll be a door left open for Wasps and Irish to step in when they need to.
I think we just got to be pragmatic about the way that we do it, right? Because it's you just got to increase it as you can, as quickly as possible, without overstretching yourself.
Yeah, but I'm excited for it. If they can do something where we've got this Prem 1, Prem 2, they also announce a rookie league at the same time. Like, it could be a hell of a lot of some really exciting stuff going on within the world of rugby.
The ecosystem suddenly becomes very exciting, doesn't it?
It does. And all those players who kind of who are resigned to playing the Premiership Rugby Cup only, there's more options out there for you as a player.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, so we're going to play Name Pending now. That's right, the game is back on the podcast, and Rory has a competitor. We have someone competing against Rory who, when we trialled this game, let's face it, was pretty naff. We have Jobby. Jobby has joined us to battle Rory. How do you feel about your chances of beating Rory, Jobby?
I think it's going to be hard. I think, I'm a Bath fan, so I'm going to be leaning towards Bath, I think. But Rory has a little bit more knowledge than me, but let's see how it goes.
Okay, I'll bear that in mind as I run through the players.
If he's worse at the game than me, then we're in for quite a long game, I suspect.
Right, okay. So for the listener, to remind everyone of the game, so Name Pending, which is the name of the game that we've kind of stumbled into, I will read off a line of statistics for a mystery player. After each statistic I read out, I will give both Rory and Jobby an opportunity to guess what player it is. I will only reveal the more telling stats of a player, i.e. their position or their club, after we have failed to guess the player after 3 turns each. We will do this, it will be inevitable. We will do this 3 times, and the winner will be whoever's got it right twice. I'll give you alternative turns to go first after each line of stats. As Jobby is the guest, he will get the first go on the first stats, and then we'll go from there.
First, he gets to be captain of North Dorset, and now he gets to go first in this. It's all coming up Jobby now, isn't it?
Bloody right. It's all down my lane, isn't it, mate?
I'm a big fan of this.
Okay. Round 1. This player, playing in the current Premiership season, we're talking, has played 676 minutes of rugby.
Ibitoya.
Incorrect.
Oh, God. It's averaging about an hour a game. I would guess Theo Dan?
Incorrect. I really do appreciate it's going to be very unlikely anyone ever gets it right after the first round.
Amazing, wouldn't it?
It would be incredibly impressive. So this player has made 102 tackles. Rory to go.
Tom Dunn?
Incorrect.
Jack Kenningham.
Incorrect. Okay, last line of the first set. This player has carried 217 metres. Jobby to serve.
So, Alfie Barbary.
Incorrect.
Ollie Cracknell.
Incorrect. Jobby, as it is your set, would you like position or club?
Oh, club.
Okay, the club of this player is Newcastle Falcons.
Oh, bloody hell.
Yeah, bugger.
Okay, this player has scored 5 tries.
Is it Ranshaw?
Incorrect.
Alan Chick?
Incorrect. This player has missed 21 tackles.
Rabwan.
Incorrect.
Oliver Fella?
Incorrect. Okay. This player has won 6 turnovers.
Absolute mind blank. Brocklebank.
No, but I appreciate the shout for Adam Brocklebank, assuming he scored 5 tries.
Anderveld?
Wow, you're going to kick yourselves when you know who it is. I really thought you would have got this one by now, so I'm trying to look for a useful stat. This player has beaten 8 defenders.
Come on, man.
Is it Rory first?
Yeah, Rory to serve.
Oh, me to serve, is it?
I'm a bit lost, but yeah, go for it.
Alex Hurl?
Nope.
Running out of Newcastle players.
Balmare.
Wait, say that again.
Balmare.
Do you mean Jamie Blamire?
That's the one. Yeah.
That's the first set to Jobby.
Oh God, it's the only one.
I thought you were going to get it, Rory, because you were listing hookers to start off with.
Oh, did I not think of Blamire? Oh Christ!
I didn't really. I just got his name wrong. I took a punt.
Oh no!
Yeah, one of your front row brothers here. It's a bit of a shock that a bit of a shock in the start of the first game of name pending with a competitor, Rory. But we move swiftly on. Let's put this one behind you. It's your serve. Remember. So we're looking at last season. Last season, 23-24.
Okay.
This player ran 771 meters.
God, is that a lot? I don't know.
That meters gained.
Meters gained 771 meters.
I say just ran it.
I didn't phrase it quite right. Yeah, meters gained 771 meters.
Okay, so that's like 35 meters a game if they played it. Oh, I don't know. Is that even a useful thing for me to think of? Atkinson?
Incorrect.
Tyrone Green.
Incorrect.
Oh, what a rubbish guess.
This player played 954 minutes of Premiership Rugby.
Okay, let's go with Will Muir.
Incorrect.
God, I don't know. God.
One of the second stat, Rory.
Maritoje.
Correct. This player made 11 clean line breaks.
Van Resbergen.
No.
More than that, isn't he?
Clean breaks. That must be, in that case, it couldn't be anyone else other than Tom Roebuck.
I like the confidence, but you're wrong. Club or position?
Is it me? I'll go with club.
Bristol Bears.
Okay. In that case,
I'll give you a stat line. This player made 42 tackles.
Harry Randall?
Incorrect.
Rich Lane.
Jobby comes in 2-0. Rich Lane.
Bloody hell.
You need to get a consolation goal in here. Otherwise, you're in line for a whitewash. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to throw a curveball out here now.
Okay.
This is the stats from last year's Champions Cup.
Right, okay.
Last year's Champions Cup. I'm going to keep it to a Premiership player, but it's from the Champions Cup statistics.
Right. I don't know if that's helpful to me or not.
I can open it up if you want.
No. Yeah, I better not.
Okay, and this is last year, remember? Last year, in the Champions Cup. This player played 549 minutes.
Who's serve?
Jobby to serve.
I'm going to go with Finn Smith.
Incorrect.
Presidente?
Incorrect. This player carried for 344 meters. Serve, Rory.
Lee Lawrence?
Incorrect.
Curtis Langdown.
Incorrect. This player beat 19 defenders.
Jobby to serve.
Jobby to serve.
Elliot Daly.
Incorrect.
19 defenders. Well, that seems like a good number. I will say Feo Oboso.
Position or club? Rory pick.
Club.
Harlequins.
Oh, right. Okay, then.
I didn't pick a Gloucester one for you. I apologise.
You weren't in the Champions Cup.
So this player scored 5 tries in the Champions Cup last season.
Tyrone Green.
Incorrect.
Oscar Beard.
Incorrect. This player conceded 11 turnovers.
Aidan Murley.
Incorrect.
Literally just about the same. Alex Dombrandt.
Incorrect. This player passed the ball 54 times.
Nick David.
Incorrect.
Oh, God. I can't lose this 3-0.
So he scored 5 tries, passed it 50, so it's got to be...
But this is last season.
Yeah, last season. Oh, God. I forgot his... The one I'm thinking of is the inside centre. I can't remember his name. I'll go with Tom Lauday.
No, not Tom Lauday. Is that 3? Are we at position and club?
Yeah.
Well, this is going to kill you, Jobby, but position is inside centre.
I think... Oh, I can't remember his name.
Oh, God. Anyanwu?
No.
Oh, no.
The only stat I could probably give you now, without being too obvious.
Is it Esterhazen?
3-0.
He was still there last season?
Yeah. 3-0
No.
to Jobby. Rory, you've been thoroughly...
Oh,
I generally thought that, he wasn't there last season. That's why I was thinking the same one Rory said.
Yeah, no, he was there. He was there 23-24.
Yeah.
It's amazing how quickly you forget.
Oh, God.
Well, Rory, how does that feel?
Well, I was pretty sure I was shit in this game, and I was right.
And Jobby, how does it feel to be, not only the first competitor at name pending, but also the first competitor, I'm hoping of many, to completely whitewash Rory?
I like to think I set the bar high after that first round arm wrestle, I'll call it.
Oh, fantastic. Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, no. Oh, yeah, very, very good. I've set the bar, I think, now, so...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So many team sheets from now on.
That's it. That's the trick. So yeah, if anyone else wants to compete against Rory or think they could do a better job than Jobby, get in touch with us because we'll get you on. All I can say is thank you, Jobby, for coming on and thoroughly embarrassing Rory for me because I enjoyed that thoroughly.
Jobby, where can the people watch you running around the paddock in the near future?
So what have we got? Farnham this weekend at home in North Dorset. They're top of the league, so I think that's going to be a long day.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes. And then few away trips down to Newbury in the near future. And I think the rest are at home actually. So the North Dorset area, get yourself down.
Up the ND boys.
There we go.
There we go. Thank you
Thanks
very much,
Jobby, and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks, hopefully.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. Cheers, Jobby.
Cheers, mate. Cheers, bye.
Bye.
Cracking.
Oh, God, I'm rubbish.
Come on. That couldn't have gone better, in my opinion. So yes, I'll just reiterate, if anyone wants to play name pending against Rory and make him have this exact same reaction, please do get in touch. Moving on swiftly. Now we're going to talk this weekend coming up, the Six Nations. We got round 3 of the Six Nations, and we would not be doing our job if we didn't at least talk about the games ahead of us. Okay, so the fixtures start off with Wales versus Ireland on the Saturday, England versus Scotland in the Calcutta Cup clash after that, and then it finishes off with Italy versus France. Rory, give me your whirlwind review or preview of these fixtures for me.
Yeah, so Wales versus Ireland. Wales will be buoyed by the news that Cameron and Kelleher have been announced as out of this week's game. So that weakens Ireland significantly. They'll only be able to bring in Dan Sheehan and Jack Conan to replace them. So I'm looking ahead to a likely drubbing to the Welsh. Although they do have Matt Sherratt coming, they've called up Max Llewellyn,
Thank God.
Gareth Anscombe, finally, Jared Evans as well. So it'd be interesting to see what team they pick and what they try and do this weekend. But with the best will, I don't see the type of improvement they'd need to beat Ireland, and I suspect Ireland will win this pretty comfortably. I'm going to guess by 20 points.
So what you're saying, Rory, is get some Irish players into your fantasy team.
No, I'm telling you all to put the Welsh in your team and to not put any Irish in whatsoever, because I've got a lead to maintain.
Well, yeah, yes, absolutely. England versus Scotland.
Looking forward to this one. Hopefully, we'll be watching this with you in a pub in Bristol somewhere with some other our former teammates from university days. So David's bum depending. He and I will be in a pub somewhere. Yeah, that's what I said. I'll be somewhere in Bristol watching this. England have named virtually the same side as against France. Ollie Chesham coming in for George Martin to probably shore up the line out a little bit.
That's what I think.
A little bit more mobility around the park potentially, but I quite like having George Martin on the bench as someone to come on and just smack a few boys in the last sort of 20, 30 minutes. So that'd be interesting. And I think they haven't won the Calcutta Cup since 2019 now.
Yeah, that
rings a bad run of it. Scotland waiting to see whether Finn Russell and Darcy Graham are going to be fit or not. They've got a couple of injury issues. Had a few call-ups today. Cam Redpath's back in the squad, I think. Not to get too carried away with one win against France, but I'm pretty excited about what the England team are trying to do. I think they're going to continue with the form. It'd be a real shame if they don't, because the negativity will spiral afterwards. But I think England are going to win this one by 7 points.
Yeah, I agree. I just really hope that it's not another weekend where Duhan van der Merwe becomes all England fans' nightmare and for some reason turns into the world's best winger just for one fixture.
Yeah, if you want a surefire bet this weekend, Duhan van der Merwe to score 2 tries.
Yeah, get him in your fantasy teams, people. And then to round off the weekend, Italy versus France. I think this is quite an interesting fixture now on paper.
Yeah, the rumours are that France are going to go with a 7-1 bench.
Yeah,
Maxime Lucu covering the whole back line. Yeah,
I've seen that. And also the rumours are it'll be Thomas Ramos at 10, Leo Barret at 15, and Damien Penaud dropped entirely from the squad with Atis Ogby coming in on the wing. Apparently Galtier's very not happy with Penaud's performance last week against England, where he missed 5 of the 6 tackles he attempted. Yeah, I mean, we talked about Gautier being ruthless. That's not quite what I expected him to do, but I'm not surprised they're pressing the nuclear button. Dropping Penaud and Jalabert feels like a bit of throw the baby out with bathwater, but I expect France to have a reaction. I suspect they'll win this one, but I think Italy will be competitive. To be honest, depending on what the conditions are like this weekend in Rome, could really determine it. But assuming it's a reasonably dry track, Italy will fancy themselves to push France quite close, particularly after last year getting the draw. Probably should have got the win. I'd love to back Italy on it, but I suspect France win this one by 10. Yeah, I think because of the reaction to the England result, for the tournament, I thought this might be the banana skin for France. I think because they had the banana skin early, I think they'll get a reaction. The only thing that's a sure thing is that you will see Menoncello and Brex going down Thomas Ramos's channel over and over and over again. If Thomas Ramos, if he's not already having nightmares about Tommy Menoncello, then he should be. Yeah. So yeah. Completely. I think I'm on board with you, those predictions, Rory. I think I'm more or less on the same page. All I can say is I'm very much looking forward to indulging in the first game with yourself and some of our past teammates from university. And also, we're going to be attending the England A game. Yes, at Ashton Gate on Sunday. Really looking forward to that. England going with a very interesting squad, a few names that many people won't be aware of. Some guys who seem to have been called straight up from basically under 18s final. Yes, there are some interesting names that have been added to the squad. I think those are just training players. I don't think we'll see those on the pitch. But there's some interesting combinations that I'm looking forward to seeing. Most notably, George Hendy in the 15 shirt. I really hope he'll be starting. The Ginger Flash is back, and by all means been told that he was looking just as dangerous as ever on the weekend for Northampton when they were playing against Nottingham. So hopefully he gets a good run out, and hopefully he'll be starting. We'll be waiting with bated breath for that starting team sheet once it comes out, so we can start hypothesising about how that game's going to go.
Really excited for that one. I mean, it's sort of fodder for us, really, the sort of thing that we really like. But I like the A games. I'm really excited that they're coming back. I hope we see more of them. I like seeing these kind of lesser known combinations, seeing some players put their hands up to go further, or even just to get their names out there. I think it'd be a great day.
Yeah,
and if you're in the Bristol area, I don't think it's a sellout yet. Get yourself a ticket. It's not
absolutely. Get yourself down there. And if you get yourself down there and you spot either myself or Rory, we're quite noticeable chaps. Come and say hello.
Mob. Yeah, come and say hello.
Come and introduce yourselves to us, and we'll happily have a chat with you. Right, that leads us to Rory's favourite section. Please all be standing. It is time for the address to the nation from the El Presidente of the DPRFR. Rory, what do you have for this week?
Well, for some teams it was a fallow week. Some teams it was a chance to put their feet up. But for the workhorses of the DPRFR, there's never a week off. And there's always something to shout about. So this week, in a celebration of the Sprogs of the DPRFR running around Kingsholm on Sunday, I would like to highlight a man that David alluded to earlier on today, the loose head for Yorkshire Academy, Mauls Lister, for quite possibly the most glorious haircut I've seen in rugby in many a long year. The 1970s, 1980s permed blonde mullet, a la Minor Strikes, a la feel-good British movies from the 90s about minor strikes. So I'm thinking of Brassed Off, Full Monty, that kind of thing. Northerners having fun.
Yeah.
Mauls Lister with one of the best haircuts I've ever seen, and I think if that doesn't get him a professional contract, I don't know what will, because I would love to see that bouncing around all the Premiership rugby grounds in the future. Well, it was fabulous.
Yeah, so he was up in the stands, and there I was towards the end of the event, and I can tell you, close up, it was just as glorious as it was on the YouTube live stream.
It looked like it radiated light.
It was certainly noticeable.
So Mauls Lister, a stand and salute from El Presidente of the DPRFR. I hope to see you in future years plying your trade, and don't get rid of the haircut, or I'll cut your head off.
Well, you heard it here first. You have to remember there is a completely set of laws and rules in the DPRFR, of which we must abide everything the El Presidente says, and everything he does say is final. So if he cuts your head off, unlucky. So yeah, no, thank you very much for that, Rory, and kind of shining the light on some future, perhaps members of the DPRFR, council. It's good to see these youngsters coming through. So with that, we will bring a close to the address to the nation of the DPRFR. That is bringing us to a close for this week's podcast. We've worked some of the questions we've had into the conversation we had today. I hope you enjoyed us going into a little bit more detail, talking about some of the wider things around the sport of rugby rather than our noisy, in-depth match reviews. If you have any questions for future podcasts, please do send them our way. Get in touch with us on our Instagram, our TikTok, send us an email. There's loads of ways you can get in touch with us. We don't mind any which way you do it. Also, we have a Discord server which has been launched that we're testing out. We've got some people on board now. If you really like that sort of thing and like a big server where you can talk with other fans, get in touch and get into our Discord server. We'll happily have you on board. But yeah, for this week, that brings us to a close. So all I can say from me is goodbye. And Rory, any last words?
Viva North Dorset.
That's it, Viva North Dorset. Thank you, Jobby, for coming on Playing Name Pending. This has been Rucks, Mauls Oval Balls, and we hope to see you again next week.